Your favorite radio station.
This is Afro Vibes Radio Houston.
This is a Total Medulla production.
Looking to advertise your event or maybe your business? Contact Total Medulla at totalmedulla.com.
Too many MCs, not enough mics, not enough mics, not enough mics.
In a world where everyone is asleep, I'm awake. I am Christopher Mukes.
Having different perspectives and outlooks is key to growth. I'm Gerald Jarman.
I don't claim to know everything. I just claim to know where to look. I'm Stephen Hawkins.
I just slid right in. It's no big deal. I'm Kyle Lee. Devontae called me up on short notice.
Coming to you from the Afro Vibes Radio Houston studios, Total Medulla Entertainment presents Medulla Talk with your hosts, Devontae Hill and Stephen Hawkins. Salutations all and welcome to Medulla Talk. I'm your host, Devontae Hill. Let's get this thing started. It is Monday, October 23rd. It's not the 22nd. I don't know why it says that on the sheet. You guys are listening on Afro Vibes Radio Houston app on Thursdays. Welcome in. If you guys are watching on YouTube or Facebook, hey, how you guys doing? We're live. We're here.
Yes.
This is episode 6, and it is titled The 2017 Texas Statewide and Harris County Elections. Now, I do have to give a shout out to Kyle, because Kyle is actually punching the audio for the show today. Yeah.
You hear how I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway?
Oh man, I'm excited. But yes, Kyle's back.
Ooh, don't raise your expectations too high, Devontae. Yes, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad to be back. I missed last episode, but I'm here, ready to go.
We also have Muhammad. Muhammad, see, already distracted. This guy's been talking to girls all night.
No, I was texting a coworker.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Right.
How's it going? Excited to be here.
Yeah, I see. And Gerald Jarman, what's up, man?
I'm great. How's everybody else doing tonight?
Good. Fantastic. Gerald's here via phone, so as usual.
Yeah. He
disembodied voice.
There was another mode of communication with him.
At some point, we do have to get Gerald into the studio so you can actually see his face. But
well, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I will be down there so I can visit some of y'all.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be nice.
And we could have like a show in Austin. That'd be really cool.
Oh, boy.
You know what we should do? He should be up here by himself and we all call in and interrupt him when he's about to speak. And,
a huge reversal.
Yeah, just,
Oh, boy.
We have a great show for you guys today. The statewide propositions, we're going to get through all that. As you know, or at least you should know, we're having an election this year. Mm-hmm. And so we need to be informed. We're also going to be talking about, for folks who live in Houston, the Sylvester Turner bond authorization request that he has. So we're going to be mentioning those things. And then Muhammad's actually going to tell us some info about some important races if you live in the city of Houston. But for those, like I said earlier, early voting is going to be, or actually it started today.
Absolutely.
Today on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be going into the 3rd. The actual election day is going to be on the 7th. But please do not wait until the last minute. You know, the big reason why is because early voting, you can basically vote anywhere on the 45 locations. But on the actual election day, you have to vote in the location of your district. So it makes it a little bit of a headache trying to figure out where you can vote on the election day. It's much easier if we just do the early voting.
Mm-hmm. But people don't listen. So.
Yeah, well.
Yeah,
it is what it is on that one.
If they had a late voting, I'm pretty sure people would probably get in that.
Very true. Oh, another thing. So according to the Houston Chronicle, over 30 locations were damaged by Hurricane Harvey. So they're not going to be as much as it was last year. But again, like I said, 45 will be available. So you should be able to find something close to where you are.
Mm-hmm. There should be schools and libraries, lots of places.
Stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's get into the state propositions. This is going to affect everybody in the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. Let's get into this very first one. So very first one that you're going to see on your ballot sheet, it says that the constitutional amendment authorizing the legislature to provide an exemption for property tax of a resident homestead of a disabled veteran or surviving spouse of a disabled veteran if the resident household was donated by a charitable organization. So, I don't know about stuff like this. To me, this doesn't really seem like it helps.
I mean, it clearly is for veterans and retired veterans or disabled veterans, not necessarily for majority of the citizens. So, I mean, it's for someone. It's just probably not for the majority.
But what does it actually do? I mean, if you're really trying to do something, folks like this should already have like a life insurance plan. And if that person passes away in the line of duty, you know, they should be tapping into life insurance, not a tax exemption. And what if you don't own a home? Then basically this does nothing for you.
There's a lot of people in the
I think
military
this is
assisted
for
living.
I think this is for the veterans that fall through the cracks, because the United States does not have a very good track record of taking care of its veteran population.
But I don't see this taking care of veterans. That's my point. Like, if you don't own a home, you don't get this tax exemption.
Well, it's taking care of a select group of veterans, not entirely the majority.
And that's why I'm saying this is a waste of time. Like, if you're really trying to do something, you should have a life insurance, some type of life insurance policy for everybody that's a veteran, not just a few select folks. So that's what I'm saying. This proposition to me is a waste of time.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So Proposition 2, that's going to be the constitutional amendment to establish a lower amount of expenses that could be charged to a borrower and removing certain financing expenses limited to a home equity loan. So, Muhammad, if you want to kind of elaborate on what the hell are you doing over there, man?
I'm looking at the the propositions.
Oh, I got them.
Yeah, because I'm on my phone. I wasn't able to.
Well, I have them pulled up if you would like for me.
Yeah,
to read.
I wasn't able to print all of them out.
It should be on here.
Yeah, but I have the analysis.
That's like the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, isn't it awesome?
So essentially, what Proposition 2 is suggesting is that it's encouraging more types of home loans, right? So it's expanding that line of credit. And as you know, like, I would say after 2008, well, the years leading up to 2008, there was a vast amount of lines of credit, right? But the problem with Proposition 2 is it could lead to predatory lending.
Yeah.
That's which eventually led to 2008, the recession of 2008.
It takes away those fees, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another thing I didn't really understand is taking out loans from home equity. Mainly because your mortgage is already a loan, right? You don't own your home when you take out a mortgage.
Yeah.
And if you're borrowing from what little equity you do have, I imagine it's basically taking a loan out of a loan.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
So, I mean, if you're in a situation where this is an option for you, I believe it's a very unfortunate situation, because it's like, why would you want?
You shouldn't be in this predicament to begin with. So now we have to make a bill to make it easier for you to get out of this predicament.
Yeah.
This is probably just another giveaway to a lot of our elected officials' buddies who are in the financial sector, to be honest.
I mean, isn't the home market kind of not doing as well as they want it to be doing as well? So they probably try to make some type of bill or some type of amendments that kind of help ease those people who aren't really being as productive or lucrative in the home owning or home selling industry as they used to.
Because, I mean, real estate in Texas is huge. It's a big industry here.
Oh, heck yeah.
And so I imagine this is basically going to help out those folks, not necessarily... you're going to say something?
Yeah, so, like, let's elaborate on that, right? Essentially, you know, like in the Texas Constitution, the right to property, especially property tax, it's safeguarded in the Constitution. And I'm assuming the Texas Constitution sees or identifies property or land as something, as a constitutional right compared to other state governments, right?
Right.
And then of course it ties that into the whole notion of the American dream, right? That, of course, and we talked about this in previous episodes, but the notion of American dream is, having your own home and having owning that home, not renting it, owning that home. And
to add to that, so that was the first part of Proposition 2. The second part to that is establishing certain authorized lenders to make home equity.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they're trying to limit the market to a certain select group of people or companies. And then on top of that, changing certain options for the refinancing of home loans and changing the threshold for an advance in home equity line of credit, allowing home equity loans on agricultural homesteads.
Oh, so this is now expanding to just owning properties or farms and all kinds of other things. Okay. I mean, it'll definitely help because, Texas is big on their crops.
Yeah.
So it probably helped them out too.
And cattle.
Cattle.
And there's a lot of.
But I don't own any horses or cows, so it's not really going to help me.
Yeah.
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 I do have a granny note, kind of feeding off of what Muhammad said.
Granny note.
Granny loves
man.
the show so much. She's like, she saw me working on the show earlier today. She's like, hey, you know what about that Proposition 2? Let me tell you something about Proposition 2.
Hey, do you have a back on my day button on the soundboard?
Back in my day.
Unfortunately, I need to make one. one. No, she was saying that kind of leading to Muhammad's point, predatory lending, right? That's another one. And then she had the question of what is changing. Is it up or down? And it's not specified here.
It's not.
And so,
and it's not going to be clear. Like, it's not going to be up. It'll be probably up for a certain amount of people and probably down for the majority.
And I wish with these propositions that they would elaborate and give us context. Because, a lot of times, especially if I'm in the booth and I'm thinking I got about 20 minutes, I'm going to just knock this out real quick. You read some of this stuff and it's not written in layman terms. And half the stuff, I don't know what the context is. Like, what inspired somebody to make an amendment on this?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not telling you why you should vote for. It's telling you what to vote for.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't tell you what you're voting for.
Oh, okay. Well, that too.
They do that on purpose. So, why would they tell you what it is?
I want to know what's going
explicitly?
on. I want to know what the hell I'm voting for.
Well, unfortunately, they don't expand on their proposals too well, so they expect from majority of people to do their own investigations, their own homework to learn exactly what each amendment, what each bill, whatever they vote for. A lot of people don't do that. They go into booths naive and they pick yes or no or right or left or up and down, and then have to suffer the consequences. Or they may grow prosperous from whatever selection they make. You never know.
Well, that's unfortunate. Anyway, State Proposition 3. So the constitutional amendment limiting the service of certain office holders appointed by the governor and or confirmed by the state after the expiration of a person's term of office. So does that mean that if there's currently not a person in a particular position, that position is going to be vacant?
Well, what it means is unsalaried appointees whose terms have been ended but who have not been replaced would serve only until the next legislative session has ended.
Okay, so what does that mean for the common person?
Well,
That's
as long as it doesn't affect my Wi-Fi, I'm okay.
So I think what it means is that they'll be able to stay in that office until the next session begins. And essentially what this proposition is allowing more Texans to fill those positions, right?
So then why does it say limiting the service of certain office holders? To me, limiting means
cutting off.
Yeah.
Making it harder.
Unless my definition of limiting is wrong.
Unless you're trying to prevent certain people from re-election, perhaps.
Yeah, so limiting, I'm assuming in this context, it's limiting the service of those already appointed.
Oh, so
personnel,
if you've been elected 6 or 7 times in the last 30 years, it's time for you to go.
But there's a downside. And we talked about this yesterday, is that once they leave, and if those positions are not confirmed by the state legislature, right, or if they're not appointed and they have to be confirmed, then those offices do go vacant. And it's what you're seeing right now in the federal government.
So that leaves it open for any of us.
Yeah.
There you go, Muhammad.
There you go. Vote for Muhammad, y'all. Mm-hmm. Or Gerald Drummond.
His Tinder's going to go all crazy when he goes up for election.
Killing the Tinder game right now. I'll pass your bill, girl.
Tinder party.
Swipe left for Muhammad. Swipe right.
So the State Proposition 4 is a constitutional amendment authorizing the legislature to require a court to provide notice for the Attorney General or a challenge to the constitutionality of a state statute and authorizing the legislature to prescribe a waiting period, which is 45 days, before the state may enter a judgment holding the statute unconstitutional. And for those who don't know what statute is, a statute is a written law passed by a legislative body. Now, what would spark someone to make this amendment?
Someone who wants a particular law passed and to make it extremely hard for the opposition to remove it once they get into power. That's what I think.
And to add on to that,
seems about
even like so, the whole notion of this proposition is essentially the legislature violating those separation of powers. That's in the Constitution. That's essentially the law of the land. Is that the legislature can't tell what a court can do, right? 45 days for a notice until the court can rule a law passed by the legislature as unconstitutional is essentially a breach of separation of powers.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. And so, like, just looking at this proposition, in my personal opinion, I think this could be challenged as unconstitutional. If it was passed, it could be challenged unconstitutional in the future by the Supreme Court in the United States.
And then they would have to wait 45 days.
Just overrule that. But yeah, no, like, their reasoning is that they want to give enough time to the state attorney general to develop a case, right? But if it's ruled unconstitutional, that state attorney general will be able to develop their...
They can appeal.
Yeah, they can appeal. Yeah.
So there's already a process for that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So basically, we're just creating something that already exists, pretty much.
Yeah.
If people say yes to it. People can very easily say no, and we can just be moving on with this. But yeah. Now, I do have another granny note for this one.
Oh, here we go.
She says, man, they're always trying to push back stuff and not do their job. And then she also says, was this a response to the travel ban or the hero proposition?
Is this only applicable to laws passed in the state legislature? In Texas or nationwide?
I believe it's just Texas.
State's law. Yeah. Your grandmother's right.
She's a smart old lady.
Yeah. and to add on to
I
that...
don't think she'd appreciate you calling her old lady, but sure.
And just to add on to that, like, the whole purpose of a court is to balance the other side, right? The administration as well as the legislature, right? If the court is not allowed to rule the unconstitutionality of a law, and of course giving immediate relief to Texans, then that's a serious violation.
Yeah.
I
agree with that one. So state proposition 5. It's
this is the fun one.
What?
This is the fun one right here. Yes.
The constitutional amendment on pro sport teams and the charitable foundations conducted at charitable raffles. Now, they like to use the word charitable, but this is really about gambling at more stuff. Because I think there was something like this in the last election, and this is based on an expansion on that, where it includes women's professional teams. I think it was some other stuff that was involved.
Probably
with that.
college stuff too, maybe high school.
Like now you can gamble in other places now.
See, it says it would expand the definition of a professional sports team, giving more team-connected foundations the ability to hold charitable raffles.
Yeah.
Which means you could have a competing, I don't know, ice hockey team in your neighborhood, and they're considered a sports team now. And they can hold all kind of fundraisers and bake-offs and fish fries now, which is so unnecessary.
But sports gambling happens all the time.
Oh yeah.
Like just looking at Vegas in terms of, especially the World Series.
DraftKings.
Yeah.
Fantasy football.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what they really want to do is they want to try and make it like a gray area where they don't explicitly endorse gambling, because they do have that base where they have like the moral people that are against gambling and all that, but they also have like the business wing of their party. They're like, hey, let's bring on the gambling and make as much money as possible. So I think this is like an attempt to kind of balance those two factions out, in my opinion.
It seems unnecessary to me, but sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Muhammad and Kyle on this one. People are going to find a way to gamble if that's truly what they want to do, and this just kind of seems like not a waste of time, but like
it won't increase or decrease. Well, I play like this. I know for sure it won't increase majority of Houstonians or Texans' lives, so I don't feel like it's necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, state proposition 6. It's the constitutional amendment authorizing the legislature to provide an exemption from taxation of all or part of the market value of a residential homestead of surviving spouse or a first responder who was killed or fatally injured in the line of duty. This kind of sounds a lot like the other one. What was the other one?
Are you talking with the veterans?
The veterans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Proposition
like that
1.
one.
Yeah.
Proposition 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it said this would give property tax exemptions to surviving spouses of first responders killed in the line of duty.
And again, but whatever I said with the first proposition, as far as the life insurance thing, I would say the same thing about this one. That's just kind of.
I thought most police officers and firefighters already have, like, it's encouraged for you to get a life insurance bond because you do a job where your life is in danger. So it kind of goes without saying.
So here's another thing with this. I would be all right with all these tax exemptions if they had another way of getting income, right? The state needs money, right? And so taxes is how the state gets its money so that it can reinvest that money into roads and into other things. If we're giving all these tax exemptions out, where is the state getting its money from?
And to add on to that, it's an exemption from property taxes. Since Texas doesn't have a state income tax,
Exactly.
most of our revenue is from property taxes.
Yeah.
And
don't forget sales tax as well. That's another way that they try to increase revenues as well.
yeah.
And then so my grandmother had another note, a little granny note on this one.
Your grandmother should have been here.
I think it was past her bedtime. But she was saying that instead of giving tax exemptions, that was related to something else. What she said was, so if we're going to do this, are we going to start giving out tax exemptions for wrongful death victims? Because essentially the effect on the family is the same.
So are you saying any chance of there being a, I don't know, police shooting or anything to where a person who wasn't supposed to die died, would they become tax exempt, or if it got hit by a drunk driver, or
are they going to be? Because
Yeah.
I mean, her point was the effect on the family is the same.
Because if that's the case, any type of death should be tax exempt if that's the case. Because especially the ones, majority of deaths in this world are kind of unexpected. You know, homicides or any type of accidents that happen. Well, if that's the case, everyone should be tax exempt. So I think they're looking out for first responders and police officers and firefighters, which is perfectly fine.
Absolutely,
they have a dangerous job.
Yeah.
But like you referring to earlier with the veterans, it's kind of go figure, like you should have a life insurance bond. You should have something.
And if not,
to hold
that
your
should
family
be an
over.
amendment that should be in here, is creating a life insurance policy for first responders.
Absolutely.
That should be an amendment.
Absolutely. That should be a guarantee for anyone who decides to put on that uniform.
Another granny note is, this sounds like busy work. This isn't going to do anything. And then, of course, she asked, her point was, what if you don't own a home? So,
Yeah.
all right. And the last one that you're going to see is State Proposition 7, the constitutional amendment related to legislative authority to permit credit unions and other financial institutions to award prizes by lot to promote savings.
What?
Yes.
So we're having a state raffle ticket game. Anyone can buy tickets. We're gonna give all kind of financial institution and award prizes by lots of promote savings. It's gonna be great.
So basically, they're trying to create a lottery for people saving.
Yeah. Try
That
to
doesn't make any sense.
encourage people to save more.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. We should vote for it.
Yeah. So like one of the cons of this proposition
Yes,
is
con. Yes. Keep going.
this is off of an analysis of the Proposition 7, is that it's unnecessary because the program would not constitute gambling in the traditional or legal sense. So it's essentially, in other words, fluff.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
So what we've come to a conclusion is that majority of these propositions, if not all, seem to be pretty bogus to the common Houstonian or common Texan.
Yeah.
And that apparently you must be a veteran, an athlete, or a first responder to actually benefit from any single one of these.
I wouldn't even say
Actually, a homeowner majority. are
Homeowner.
probably-
Yeah,
homeowner.
Yeah.
So really, it's for people who own property or own homes,
Who are veterans.
who are veterans, or first responders, or professional athletes. then it's not gonna affect you or it's not gonna appeal to you at all.
Yeah.
What I would like to see is the for Proposition 2 and for Proposition 6 to see the statistics on how many homeowners are out there that would benefit from Proposition 2 and Proposition 6. Because whenever a proposition or resolution is being introduced in the legislature, there's always has to be research done. There's always statistics being brought up.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So what I would say is for the district propositions, you guys need to do your research on that. We will cover the city of Houston stuff, but if you're in Bel Air or any other place outside of the Houston city limits or whatever in the state of Texas, make sure that you go and do your research for those because there's going to be a lot of things that are on there. I will actually be posting information on the city of Houston and some of the Harris County propositions on our website. So if you go to totalmedulla.com in the description or the description on the YouTube video, that stuff will be there. There'll be some links on the sample ballot sheet. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of important things that's going to be mentioned. Some of it includes improvement bonds. I saw one thing that had to do with mixed drink sales. Most importantly, school board officials. And I will say
that's important.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say, even if you don't have kids, make sure to help out your neighbor and vote for a competent person. And if you're not willing to do research for your neighbor, then at least leave that section blank. The worst thing you can do is just vote for some random person.
Yes.
And then make someone else's life hard because you decide to be lazy.
Not to mention, those kids will grow up to be members of society. You want to make sure they're functional members of society.
Absolutely. So
please do not vote straight ticket and do as much research and due diligence as you can in regards to school board elections because those are the most important elections locally.
Yeah. We're going to go to break. But when we come back, we're going to be talking about Sylvester Turner's bonds. Stick around. You guys are listening to Medulla Talk.
We're giving you the best on Afro Vibes Radio. We are 24/7, so don't change that dial. Just leave it on.
For voice talent or video production services, contact Total Medulla at totalmedulla.com. Man, women really seem to be dominating the talk show game. And when it comes to male-led talk shows, they're only talking about entertainment, sports, or music. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the only place I can get deep conversation about stuff coming from black males is either through a sermon or from Neil deGrasse Tyson. Anyway, luckily, Afro Vibes Radio Houston has Medulla Talk. It's literally the embodiment of diversity of thought from a male perspective. We have people from all walks of life and from different backgrounds come to the show and share their thoughts. We discuss social norms, news headlines, philosophy concepts, Houston local issues, as well as common curiosities. Best of all, we aren't afraid to give you that real.
There's a difference between voting and getting involved in the process or having a peaceful protest and stuff like that and busting out windows, beating up people. We cannot get to the point where we try to stop hate with our own anger.
It's Medulla Talk, the diversity of male thought. Welcome back to Medulla Talk, and we're going to get right into the Sylvester Turner bond authorization requests. So that's going to be fun. So Sylvester handed out this really nice little sheet here. That was pretty interesting. He's trying to get folks excited, I guess, to pass these bonds. So, wait, okay. I do want to clarify something. I love Sylvester Turner. I met him several times. I've been able to interview the guy. Solid dude. His press secretary, not a big fan, but him, cool.
Wait, his press secretary.
That one chick, not a big fan of her. But that's a whole other story.
That one chick. Well, everyone. Tweet her.
I'm really bad with names. I'll be the first one to admit that. So, don't sue me. Okay, so let's go through these bonds. So the first bond, the insurance of $1 billion and pension obligation bonds. Proceeds will go to funding the portion of the unfunded liability of the city with respect to the police officers and municipal employees. This debt was incurred by unfunding these systems. So, essentially, it is kind of what he was talking about when he was running, trying the whole reform plan of the pensions. and this is basically going to help resolve that. I know, Muhammad, you wanted to mention something about Detroit.
Yeah, so essentially what this bond is trying to address is the pension problem that cities in America usually have. Every city, they have civil servants, and on most occasions, they have a form of pension set up with the city. Once they retire, they collect that pension.
Right.
Why I bring up Detroit is because their situation was interesting. They had a pension problem where they had a lot of civil servant employees who were, of course, in retirement, and they were collecting their pension. But at the same time, the city was facing a shrinking tax base and also dilapidated infrastructure. And so a shrinking tax base, a large pension that they got to keep on paying out to these civil servants, as well as a dilapidated infrastructure, of course, caused Detroit to file for bankruptcy. What this measure is trying to do is trying to resolve the pension issue ballooning into something,
a crisis.
Which a lot of cities across America face.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm all right with it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I don't really. I mean, obviously, this wouldn't affect you, Gerald, but.
well, like in general, I believe that if you're going to offer those kind of pensions and benefits to your employees, that you have to honor that, and to wiggle out of that would be a crime, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So the second bond is insurance of $160 million to public safety improvement bonds for the acquisition, construction, rehabilitation, and the equipment of properties of public safety improvements for police and the fire department.
B.
Which I don't have an issue with either. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the pension bond, right? There's a misconception that it raises taxes. We were talking about this yesterday night about how when people don't like to get their taxes raised, but how is the trash going to be picked up, or how are the roads will be repaired?
Well, I think they're more worried about who's getting their taxes raised. I think that's always the biggest issue. Is it going to be the people who do upper class, higher class people, or is it going to be the middle class, or is it going to be the lower class? They want to have this idea that, we kind of get something from everyone, but all these tax breaks and all these limitations and everything that they do to kind of help ease people who are in upper class, people get the lower class, but they become a little more aware of it, a little more worried about it, and they kind of go against it. So I think if they had a clear understanding of who is getting taxed and how much and what demographic, I think it's easier to process a proposition like that.
And I think it's an unfortunate situation that we aren't there isn't a bunch of transparency with all this, because before what you just said, I was under the impression that people preferred to give their money to rich folks versus giving their money to the government. Because look at Houston.
The government is full of rich folks. So,
but look
I
at
think
Houston,
I think they prefer giving their money to like a corporation or a collection of individuals.
Well, this is what I mean.
Like
I was going to clarify it. So, like, look at how our roads are structured. I mean, in Austin especially, it is littered with toll roads.
Don't even get me started. Don't even do it.
To me, toll roads don't make any sense. Like, why don't you have the city construct these roads so that, and I would much rather pay my one-time tax to get these roads constructed than to pay $2 each time I use West Park Tollway.
Yeah. Well, that's why they are like trying to really enforce easy tax, so people don't have to pay that money. So now it's like, well, yeah, you can probably pay your money, or you can get this tag for $40 a month or $50 a month, however much it is. Even if you don't use it, guess what? You have it just in case. It kind of...
You're drafting $40 a month. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, people are okay with that. They're not okay with paying the government that much.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Like, I'd rather just get the roads.
Yeah, like I believe, if I recall correctly, like when they first built those tollways, the companies that built them were like foreign companies and received a huge portion of that revenue from those toll roads. So
the guy who owns,
it's not even anybody in the United States getting it; it's somebody else. Like,
the person who owns the Sam Houston tollway is some Chinese dude.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Hey, America's made in China. So
That's so messed up.
So true.
It is though. It's unfortunate. We gotta take it back our country, guys. Anyway.
Oh God, that's how we got here in the first place. Proposition C.
So the third bond is insurance of $104 million for park improvement bonds for the conservation, improvement, construction, and equipment of neighborhood parks, recreational facilities, bayous, including such green areas along all the bayous to create an integrated system of bayou walking, running, and bike trails to enhance, preserve, protect the health of citizens, water quality, and the natural habitat of native wildlife.
Okay, these all sound nice. They all sound like great things. But when you refer to the bayou, how is this going to help the bayou next time we have a disaster?
This is not going to...
This is none of that. This is more cosmetic.
It's going to make it look pretty.
It's not going to look pretty underwater, by the
way. So, like, from my understanding, this Bayous 2020 project, right, that they're trying to expand the bayous, like deepen them, widen them. I feel like, you know, if that's the city's focus, my personal opinion is that they have to buy the land near the bayous.
Yeah.
And they need to stop developing along those bayous, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the water canals in Los Angeles, supposedly some of their waterways, man-made waterways, are 2 blocks wide. They're wide. Ours or Houston's, it's nothing.
Yeah. Which is weird because we're basically in a delta.
Yeah. I mean, Harvey just proved that like we could not handle a storm half the size of Harvey.
And we weren't even directly hit.
Yeah.
All we got hit with was rain.
Yeah. Like
we didn't handle that well.
Yeah. Imagine if we had winds and all kind of things.
Oh yeah. Imagine if the hurricane like plopped itself directly on Houston. Like that's
it's game over.
I'm all for.
It's a lot easier to get those sort of like projects like the bayou, like the cosmetic bayou projects done, than getting like a huge renovation project like widening like the spillways and all that done.
Well, if you notice,
and you have a lot of people fighting that as well too, because they don't want that built in their backyard. It's going to ruin their business proposition. A lot of the land that's going to sit on is very valuable as well.
That's too bad. Relocate them.
Do you think that's why they included, neighborhood parks and recreational centers in this bill too, to kind of make it more approachable?
Yeah.
Like, oh, hey, not only are we helping the city, but we're also helping the youth and all the young people and children.
But no, to your point, Gerald, they need to relocate those folks. The public safety is more important than somebody's.
Oh yeah, don't worry. I don't care about your view.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what I've heard about Houston is it's unique compared to other U.S. cities. It's philanthropic, right? Where the wealthy do their part, and of course, one example is the public-private partnership with some of these parks that they've made, right? Yeah. Discovery Green, Memorial Park. I
agree with that.
This Bayous project, which is interesting because they're focusing their time and energy on these issues, right? But if they could allocate that to the homelessness in Houston.
Oh, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
No.
Homeless people aren't pretty. We can't make money off.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can't sell that as much as you can like a park. You just like stand and have a commercial.
Because you know what Discovery Green does, right? They charge $12 for parking.
Ooh.
So and they also have events where vendors have to rent out those lot places.
Not to mention, there's hotels nearby. George R.
There's
Brown.
a lot of money to be made at Discovery Green.
Everybody makes money off of that.
Yeah. So to me, I even look at that as not necessarily them helping out the community, but more like an investment for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, this is an investment for me because if we pretty this place up, I can get some serious money back.
I mean, everything they do is an investment. Like, think about when they had Astroworld. Like, that's an investment because, people will travel into the city to go to this thing, or people in the city will frequently come back and forth. You're basically making money daily at this point. It's not really about the city of Houston. It's about, hey, how much can we profit off of this business?
And the only way that homelessness would really get resolved is if there was some way to make money off of it.
Oh, I mean, they make money off prisoners. So I don't see why.
Don't give anybody any ideas, please.
And we have to seriously tackle sex trafficking, if we're going to really be about it. But that's a whole nother.
It is a whole other episode.
A whole nother thing. So. All right, the fourth one. So, insurance of $109 million to public facility improvement bonds for the acquisition, construction, rehabilitation, and equipment permanent improvements to support public health and wellness, sanitation, and other essential governmental and general services of the city. That was extremely vague. Extremely vague. What does that mean?
As far as public health is concerned, I mean, that could be a wide variety of things. It could be maybe trying to stem, like, I guess, drug use, maybe have like a needle exchange program, maybe talking about, I guess, sexual health, like literally anything when it comes to public health.
Yeah, that's very vague.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would
Very
like
broad.
to know more about that.
Yeah, I need details because this is really just a widespread statement.
Right, and I mean that's not chump change either. That's that's $109 million. So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
and they already
still
have a
for it, though,
park
so.
one. I mean, the park one was Bond 3, right? Now, there is one thing I want to add to that, and that was going back to what I mentioned earlier in the show about
Are you about to
Sylvester's
read
little
the
handy
you
sheet.
about to read the manifesto?
Now, when I read this, I thought that Gerald probably had a hand in this.
Wait, what happened? What?
So what? There was one section on this that really got my attention, and it says, if the pension obligation bond measure fails, $1.8 billion of the 85 billion in negotiated benefit reductions could be immediately reversed. As a result, the 1.8 billion hit the crowd, or crowd out everything else in the city budget. We will see our neighborhoods decline and fewer officers patrolling the streets. Fewer firefighters will be there for emergency calls, and fewer workers will repair our roads and pick up heavy trash. The sky will fall down. Fire will come from the ground. That part is actually not in there. But they did say that businesses will be looking at other places and not expanding and relocating their employees in Houston. So basically, he's saying if these things don't get passed, we're all going to die.
The apocalypse will happen. Nuclear fallout.
Well, I do think it's like with all of the posturing, that is a real serious possibility of, like, especially with, like Muhammad was talking about earlier, a lot of major cities do have problems with the pension funding and all that. And I mean, this is a real issue that needs to be addressed. And I'm glad someone's doing it.
Yeah.
It's good.
Now, the one thing I do want to kind of touch on is the importance of voting, because it's an off year, right? No presidents being elected.
Oh God.
So a lot of folks are probably the voting thing is probably not on their radar.
Oh God, it's almost been a full year since
Yeah.
the election.
Yeah, we've had a full year of Trump.
It's like
Oh, man,
a
it's-
year-long hangover.
It feels like it's been an administration already, and we have 3 more years.
Kind of like when you've been in a relationship and you think it's only been like it's been 7 years, but it's only been like 2 months. Oh my God,
That's when you got to get out as soon as
Yeah.
If
possible.
it's dragging on like that,
it's dragging on. That's how. But anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
So, I guess how do we motivate folks? Even if you could, I guess, can you motivate folks to actually pay attention and care about the non?
One thing I've learned, especially dealing with the the presidential elections, is people are really into the spectacle. They are really into the season, the swing of anything, really. If you just have some type of feeling to something, no matter how important it is or how little importance it has, as long as there's a campaign, a movement, something to follow, people get interested in it. So people are interested in the presidential election because there are these public figures that we look at and like, oh, look at that guy. There's not the same pop and circumstance for local government, for state government, for some odd reason. And I think people don't really look at what exactly is at stake with the votes. They don't look at the propositions. They don't read what these propositions means. Heck, most of the propositions don't even tell you what they mean. So
That's true.
Now you have to do more research. People want black and white answers. They want the good guys, they want their bad guys. They want to just be able to pick A and B. They don't want to actually do research and have to go through. That's why when you vote the presidential election, you can just push a Democrat button that votes for all the Democrats.
You would like that, wouldn't you, Muhammad?
It makes life so
Actually,
easy.
that's being taken out in 2020. Straight tickets. Being
It's so
taken
crazy.
Out,
Like you literally just push for the right button and all of the Dems are picked. So
Yeah,
people
that's
want that simplicity, and the problem is it can't be that simple because of how much is at stake.
So
I mean-
then why do? Oh, go ahead, Gerald.
Well, I with the kind of piggybacking what you said, I don't think it's a spectacle that needs to be emphasized. I think we need to make it like meaningful to them personally. Like we're talking about spending huge sums of money, right? And people just their eyes kind of glaze over when you talk about it. But we have to have a way where like the messaging is broken down, such as, hey, this public health bill is going to impact you because X service will have more increased funding, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing, so that they do have a reason to go to the polls and vote for or against whatever proposition that is.
Mm-hmm. I think it's two-part issue, right? Is that voting, getting informed on the issues, it's not sexy, right? In our culture, right? In our society. And then the other part of the issue, the problem is that people just simply don't know, right? And this goes back to our last show last week, right? About education in America. There needs to be a strong emphasis on civic education, particularly in probably the first 2 or first 3 years of high school.
Yeah.
And that's lacking, is that a lot of young adults don't know what their rights are.
Yeah.
And so...
Another Tinder girl?
Girls.
no, it's my brother. But like essentially what it boils down to is that people need to get formed on the issues because, they are the government, right? It's
supposed to be.
Yeah, they're supposed to be the government, right? They are the ones who are in power. And so, another thing they need to get out of their head is that, yes, presidential elections are important. But what's more important is local elections.
Absolutely.
Like what's on the ballot right now, those are going to be more important to them or to their family members or to their friends.
That's going to affect you directly.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Now, kind of going back off of that comment you just made, so people are the government. I don't understand folks that say they don't trust the government when the government is them. I mean, that's if you were doing your part, you are a part of the government. You have a stake in America, and as a citizen, you have an obligation to your country to participate.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing about it. I think that those people don't like the fact that there's someone telling them what they can and cannot do. Like, for instance, right, I was a census taker during the 2010 census, and I would have multiple people. It was a job. What do you want me to do, not making money? The point is anyway, like the point is like I would have multiple people. I would have multiple people try and tell me to my face that what I was doing was unconstitutional, which was just taking census data, right? And they don't know. But more importantly, they don't want someone telling them that it is an obligation or, I guess, some sort of duty, right? They want to have that notion that they are just this free person that is allowed to do whatever they want.
Anarchy?
Well, not essentially anarchy. Just them personally not being able to do it, not being forced to do it.
Oh, so I don't mind like other people having restrictions. I just don't want restrictions.
Exactly.
See, it frustrates me because these people who don't exercise their right to vote, they don't understand that there's people in American society that have been stripped of that right.
Yeah.
Felons, right? I personally believe that felons, if they've served their time, why do they have that constitutional rights remain stripped? They should be given that back.
Especially for like non-violent offenses.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how that even became a thing in the first place.
You want to know why it's a thing? Because the vast majority of people that are locked up are African American.
Yeah.
So that if you want a good way to control the way people vote, you restrict the portion of the population that is incarcerated, and it just so happens that the people that are incarcerated are brown people who vote Democratic, by the way. So just saying.
So basically, when they get out, they're free citizens, but now they no longer have this ability to vote, which is supposed to be equal, if I'm not mistaken, to all citizens. Yeah, you're right. If they do their time, they should be able to. And you have people who, these voter ID rules, the so-called voter fraud, the actual location of places to vote, that they're shrinking. There used to be, you could vote all around the city. Now it's like, well, you have to go to this select area. You have to go to this part of the city. You have to go to these places at this time.
And some people say it's because of budgetary restraints,
which is BS.
Yeah.
Because I remember going to school in elementary school, and they had all of those ballot boxes in our cafeteria. We had to be quiet while we ate lunch, which was impossible.
Right.
And they found ways for people to vote. Like, it's not hard.
Yeah,
You can find locations where people can go and vote in their communities, libraries, schools, just government buildings that people can go in, vote, and get out. It doesn't take long to vote. It takes you literally like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's not like you got people sitting there for 20 minutes trying to figure out what they want to do. People already know before they get there. It's no excuse for that.
And if you look at the Texas voting ID law, right, the one that's being challenged by federal courts, and eventually I believe it'll be challenged by the Supreme Court, is that one of the provisions in that law essentially said federal IDs, government IDs, essentially the jobs filled by low-income Black people as well as low-income Hispanic people, right? Those don't qualify, but a gun license does. As a proper ID to when you go and vote. So there's certain provisions in that bill that are clearly discriminatory against certain groups, which is...
And you know what the kicker of that is? If we voted, we would have been able to turn that down. Yeah. So here's my point, is people can't complain about certain laws if they're not an active member in fighting those laws before they become law.
Yeah.
I imagine that was probably on one of these sheets here, and one year when you decided you have something better to do, you decided to not vote.
I'll never forget. I believe it was last year when the former mayor, she made a big deal about the bathroom policy. Mm-hmm. I have never seen so many people come alive to vote.
So basically, what he's saying is we need to make sure that we create some type of scandal to make it sexy.
Mean, and I don't even want to say that. I'm just saying you're right. It seems as though people don't, like you were telling earlier, like even if you don't have kids, please try to decide what school officials you vote for because that affects your community.
Yeah,
right.
It's people who literally don't really have a real reason to vote until now. Like, oh well, I can't have people going in these bathrooms. This isn't right. When honestly you wasn't planning on voting until you read about this probably on someone's Facebook page that someone shared from someone else's Facebook page without real knowledge, and now you feel inspired to vote. And really the only thing you're hyping up is this one thing, and everything else you're like, okay, right.
Yeah, like you didn't even spend any time with the other stuff.
You were so wrapped up around this
hero
one thing. So that's just people. Like, you can't really change that.
Yeah, but I would just like people to just stop complaining then. Like, if you accept the fact that you don't want to be a part of the system, and when something happens that goes against your favor, be like, well,
I should have voted. Or, oops, I guess I got to maneuver this way now.
Yeah. Like, own up to it.
Like, at least if you vote and it don't go your favor, it's like, well, at least I tried to vote.
Yeah, like, but you can be like, you know what, I did my part, and you knuckle butts just made this hard on me.
Knuckle butts, that's funny. Did your grandma tell you that one?
Yes, she did.
Okay, basically, like, also, you could have the idea that a person can get discouraged after they made their vote. Think about it. This election we just had, the popular vote says this, but the electoral says that, and it's like, well, why the hell are we voting anyway? Nothing's changing.
Yeah.
And I think
that also consistency. With anything, it takes consistency. You can't just do something once and expect change.
But we only get to
honestly, I think that you could just do what other countries do and have whatever election day is, just be like a holiday, and everybody's off, or at least have the elections on like the weekend when everybody's off and able to participate.
You would have to do everything's off because some people work weekends.
There's actually a movement.
Government officials out there.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say there's actually a growing movement right now trying to make election day as a federal holiday.
I think Muhammad, we talked about this to add on to that.
Oh yeah,
having a app. The government can have an app, and during election seasons, you can open up your app and vote.
Like American Idol?
Yeah.
That is a terrible idea because our IT infrastructure will be hacked instantly.
Yeah. Well, that's why we would probably have to outsource that and have some other company actually develop the app. I wouldn't want the government.
So China or Russia's going to do it for us?
No, the underlying logic.
Apple, they couldn't hack Apple stuff.
The underlying logic in that was it's making voting accessible to everybody. So, people say, oh, I can't go vote or do early voting because I got 2 jobs or 3 jobs or I got kids to take care of, right? if you make voting essentially you're making voting accessible through online, right? People can vote online. Yes, there are concerns of hacking, right? And of course, elections can be tossed, but that truly does make it accessible to everybody.
Yeah. I think the national holiday idea would be a really great step in the right direction, though, because then that eliminates that excuse of I have work.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and also
they maybe have like mail-in ballots.
They were having like, oh, well, between the hours of 7 a.m. and 3 p.m., voting could be open. It's like, so the hour I go to work and the hour I leave is pretty much like, yeah, you have to go on your lunch break, and it's probably like 2,000 other people on
going on their lunch breaks.
So yeah, it's I think a holiday and all day voting would be perfect.
Yeah, I mean,
I would do it before election day.
Yeah,
like, I would probably have that a pre-election. Like, I feel like there should be a day for pre-elections or not pre-elections, but pre-voting, because
like early voting.
Because voting on election day is not always the best thing to do, because they're still counting all those votes, and you'll be up all night, and you don't know if everything's going to be consistent. So I think early voting and giving a person a whole day to vote, like, there's no excuse at that point. That's your fault that you didn't do that. It's not the government. It's not the city. It's you.
And if they can do a Columbus Day as a holiday, then surely we can do that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. As long as we're throwing out crazy voting ideas, let's do something else. A lot of other countries have like limited periods of time where, and this is for, I guess, like presidential and like actual federal elections. But like other countries have a limited period of time in which you can actually campaign. There is no like year and a half long spectacle where it's just drug out for months at a time with like nothing but 24-hour news coverage of it. And no, you have 90 days and that's it.
You talking about like for a presidential?
Yes.
You talking
90
about
days.
A 90-day campaign trail.
A 90-day campaign trip. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. No year and a half spectacle. No Donald Trump.
But we can't make a lot of money
coming down an
off of
escalator. None of that. No.
How would they? Well, I see why you would want to do that, but you do have to factor in it does take time to get campaign money, and does 90 days give yourself enough time?
Well, no more.
Wait. But does 90 days gives you enough time to have the necessary debates?
Yes.
I'm assuming. I think I know where Gerald's coming from. So if there's a 90-day time frame, there's essentially, you're implying, Gerald, there will be public funds only available, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No private funds.
Yeah.
It's all federally funded
that.
elections.
I would like that. That would be nice.
Man,
and then
there'd be some.
Of course, the primary would be held somewhere in between those 90 days, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll never greenlight that because all the corporations won't be able to get their hands on people. So it'd be nice. It'd be nice to see an honest election, but
you know, we could do the public can be like, hey, this is what we want, and you guys better go ahead and draft a bill and pass that.
And the public has to authorize a certain amount, right, for public funds to be used towards federal campaigns, right?
Yeah, like you have $100 million to campaign. That's all you get.
That's quite a lot. Also,
it seems more than normal.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Both campaigns raised like $3 billion last year. So, no, $100 million is quite enough to campaign.
Not to mention that if you're doing national elections, they probably wouldn't be able to do the grand tours that they normally do, because if you got 90 days, you could probably see the whole country in 90 days, but you won't be able to really have an influence.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, let's get into final thoughts. So, with my final thoughts, I just wanted to say that these propositions are horribly written, and that we need to create an amendment to have amendments written in layman's terms. That's one. And also, they need to add context and possibly research materials to these propositions so we know what we're voting for. Because, I mean, a lot of them, we don't know what we're voting for. Or at least give us some type of a website or some type of document where it would have this information readily available, instead of me trying to scan through millions of different websites to try to find a credible one. So,
I mean, well, if that's the case, then they should have people who you can speak to directly and can actually give you that information.
Yeah.
You really shouldn't have to go and do homework on everything. You should be able to call some
what
type
is this?
of political. Yeah, and say, hey, what exactly is Proposition B about? And someone should be able to give you a detailed explanation of exactly what that is. If they can't,
but you're depending on them to give them an unbiased, detailed explanation of it, though.
which is very difficult. I understand, but there's a lot of people who will not get on Google and Yahoo and search and research these things. They want to hear a person actually say, "I'm going to help so and so and so and so." These individuals,
like this show. Some people like to just hear our voices and
just listen to our show exclusively and tell your friends about it.
Well, I appreciate all you guys being on the show today, and thank you for those who are watching on YouTube or listening on the Thursday nights on Afro Vibes Radio Houston app. Thank you for joining us and spending your time. We have a poll question as usual, and the poll question for today's episode is: do you think amendments are worth it? And I think this is Kyle's poll question. So Kyle, elaborate a little bit on the inspiration behind this.
I'm just going by the state amendments that you read off in the beginning. A lot of them just did not appeal to the majority of people in the state. It seemed like it was made for certain individuals, like we were talking about veterans, and it was people who need these tax exemptions that could find ways to get them in other methods, like you were talking about life insurance policies, and do these amendments actually appeal to us as common citizens? And not to say common citizens in a bad way, but people who may not own the property, may not be a part of an organization, or is that going to help us? And judging by a lot of these amendments I've read, I'm not even really focused on them at all.
Yeah. Well, we want to know what you guys think. So go ahead and submit your answer in the poll question for episode 6. Just go to totalmedulla.com and look for the episode title 2017 Statewide Harris County Election.
Yes, sir.
That is all the time that we have for today's episode. We will see you guys next week. Thank you for listening to another episode of Medulla Talk on Afro Vibes Radio Houston. Join the Medulla community at totalmedulla.com and make sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Total Medulla.